What's up, Truth Seekers? Welcome. It's Thursday night. It's 8 o'clock and change in Arizona, and I'm here. I'm OhHaleYeah, and I'm here with the one and only Simple Symon. What's up, Simple Symon? How you feeling?
Feeling good. Ready for a great show.
All right, keep talking. I want to make sure it's working. Our screens didn't switch. Go ahead.
Yeah. Are we ready to talk?
Yeah, I think so. It's just not switching. All I see is myself. Okay, which is fine. So a couple things to talk about.
You're better looking anyway.
Should people care? They can go to anyone's stream. Why should they care about ours? We're going to talk about gold medal, Olympic-sized perverts, of complete idiots, and where do the files go? So that's why we're here tonight. What should we start with? Start with the Olympics?
Yeah, I like the gold medal pervert.
So it's the one event you can sympathize with, right? That's a horrible thing.
Yeah, that was horrible. Yeah.
There's been a lot of one thing that we do when we're in person is we dive deep into the issues of why should we care? What does it matter? And what should we expect to happen as a result of this? So with this piece of trash, Dr. Nasser from Michigan State, you're really good at breaking down the logical rational and the reasons that this is going to affect us down the road. And I'm really good about bashing people on Twitter. I think I'm going to let you start with for at least 20 years, for decades. So that's what I'm not good at math, but that's 4 or 5 Olympic Games. Some of the children involved were younger than my kids. I mean, they described a couple of them as toddlers. And you've got hundreds of adults that claim that they had no idea what was going on. Where have we seen this before other than Hollywood and DC, and any place where we have a lot of people who seek power, fame, money, and hashtag winning over they seek to build the reputation as character powerful and virtuous individuals. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Ali Raceman, who is one of these amazing gymnasts and, American pride, really. I mean, if we think about women's gymnastics over the course of the last 20 years, Carrie Strug and everybody else, I mean, you just think, wow, like this is an event that, inspires a lot of people to go into gymnastics. It inspires people to get off the couch, and it inspires people to watch NBC for the first time in every 2 years. So, I mean, you got a lot that goes on there. But Ali Raceman, I mean, she went on the Today Show today, and she really stuck it to a lot of different people. And first of all, the courage of the 150 some odd women that this piece of trash, I mean, really for years and years and years got away with, some of the worst things in human history. He was able to do that because they were winning. And Ali Raceman says when they were asking her, how did this happen? She started saying, we need to investigate how this happened. For so long, they put medals, reputation, and money over the safety of athletes. So she called out USA Gymnastics. She called out the U.S. Olympic Committee. She called out Michigan State. All of these places have some form or another heard some of these complaints and let them go, and why? So for me, on the logical side, I always look at a couple of different things. And one of them was, there is a psychological behavior called groupthink. And groupthink is a psychological phenomenon, according to Wikipedia, that occurs when a group of people, which with the desire for harmony and conformity in the group, results in an irrational or dysfunctional decision-making outcome.
So you mean like where you got your hat and shirt from?
You're a horrible man. You're a horrible man.
Continue.
But yes, there is a rationale behind that says, okay, why do not people that are in this situation speak up? And a lot of the reasons are because of the fear of being ostracized, right? So the fear of being ostracized out of a winning element means you're a loser, so there is a lot of different things we'll talk about in this first segment that says, I mean, you can go down the list from sports, right? So what do we think of in sports as the pinnacle of winning? And in the New England Patriots, right? And what do they get away with? They've been accused allegedly of cheating on 6 different occasions, including having guys film other people's signals so that they know what signals are being called in so that they can, you know, win Super Bowls. And I mean, this is a revered, I mean, this isn't just a, we like the Patriots. This is a revered franchise. You know, that in alone, you can think of so many other things that say, why didn't the cameraman come forward and say, I think this is wrong? Why did the guy that deflated the footballs come out and say this is wrong? Because they want a ring. They want to be part of that winning message. And we can keep going down the list, but obviously you have Wells Fargo, and that's a recent example. You had thousands of people doing something that was wrong. And why? Because the stock price kept going up. They liked the incentives. They liked the bonuses they were getting. You have these people that are, somebody calls in and opens a checking account, and next thing you know, they have a credit card, they have a savings account, they have a mortgage, because it was how many things of how many statements in different categories can we send to them every single week? And for every time they had one customer to every 4 or 5 accounts, and however much it went up to, their stock price ticked up just a little bit more. So people, why didn't they want to get away from this winning behavior? It's because they didn't want to be ostracized, and there's something to be said about that, all the way going back to the Nazis.
Did you ever see the documentary "Smartest Guys in the Room"? It was based on a book, and they made a movie about it a couple years later that came out in the regular movie theaters. Have you seen it?
No, but is that the Enron one?
It's the Enron one. It talks about the mindset of these guys and how they pulled off what they did. And it wasn't just because of what they were doing, but they were buying properties like this one in Dubai or in China that was an old mine with a structure on it that was falling apart. And they spent hundreds of millions of dollars on it. And their critics said, that's insane. Like that, you'll never get that to make money, which is why they've been passed over. But the accounting trick they used is anytime they were going to take capital loss, they wrote it off as a potential investment win. And I'm not an accountant, so I don't know the exact terms, but they replicated this process. And then they have these guys that work for Enron basically taking calls from grandmas. And my family lives in California. They had the rolling blackouts, and they're manipulating power grids, and they're turning certain ones off. And they have this old grandma calling in going, we can't get our power on and we're struggling out here. And you hear these guys talking to each other like they're in boiler room going, yeah, burn, grandma, burn. Yeah, lights out, B word. And I'm thinking, I want to strangle these guys. Like, I want to beat them in front of my grandmother and have say, no, I got this. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's really easy for you to associate yourself with your grandma making that phone call in California, right? Like, she has health problems or whatever else you have. You can associate that on the outside, but these people are on the inside, right? So they're seeing the checks, they're seeing the Super Bowl rings, they're seeing the paychecks go up. And how do you be the guy that plays spoiler, right? I mean, how do you be the guy that comes out of that and says, hey, I'm at a group think, and I'm willing to be ostracized? And what it happens is you have people like these Olympians and these, for every 6 Olympians, right, there's 1,000 wannabe Olympians that this guy could have, taken advantage of and used his clout as the Olympic doctor of all these gold medalists. And I actually think he did in some of the stuff.
Yeah, there's probably multiple sororities at MSU that this guy's fingerprints on them still. It's a little gross.
Literally and figuratively. But I mean, the sad part is that this is what happened, right? Is it took 1 survivor, 2 survivor, 3 for survivors, and then an Olympic survivor, right? Somebody that had a little bit more clout, that if she were to come out, it wouldn't be necessarily that she was the ostracized one, because they need them, right? They need them to keep up the prestige. And once 1 or 2 girls sees one of these heroic Olympians come out, then it's okay, right? It's not them anymore. It's not their fault anymore, and they can come through. And we saw this with Weinstein, right? So it wasn't just, we had the major A players, Oscar-winning actresses that were going through this for years and years and years and put up with it, knowing that they were getting the benefits on the backside. And it took the times of the people that came out of this that said, okay, this isn't right, and it's going to cost me money. It's going to cost me a secrecy clause and maybe $100,000 or $1 million or whatever else to not come out with this. But I mean, it took a group of people to do the right thing and to become one that feels like, well, if I'm not the only one out there, then technically I'm not ostracized. Because
yeah. Oh, sorry. Ostracization.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I have a couple friends in LA, or have worked in LA and have done fairly well. And I remember one of the girls when she was younger telling me some of the things she did and made a comment about, well, it's LA, you do what you got to do. And that didn't really mean much to me back then. But now I look back and say, yeah, that means you got to step over a mountain of dead bodies and Shawshank, the river of what, to come out clean on the other side. And I think of Ann Hetch today came out and said she got blacklisted because she wouldn't service that means. You've got Suzanne Summers, who basically said she got turned down for roles, and or actually she actually said she's going to vote for, or she supports Trump, so now she's out of the club. But the question
she's not even out of the club. She's probably has to move out of California.
I think you get to a point where you're Reese Witherspoon or Gwyneth Paltrow, and you go, okay, the profession I've chosen, the culture that I'm a part of, is going to subject me to these horrible things. But if I can hang on long enough, I can make it. If my ego, like, because they know they're beautiful, they know they're talented, there's a lot of competition, but if I can come out on top, what's waiting on the other side is going to be worth it. And then when you get there, like, I don't have a lot of respect for Gwyneth and Reese and the ones that are virtue signaling now, maybe Rose McGowan a little bit, because she said she told Ben Affleck, 15 years ago that Weinstein had raped her. But now they're coming out and saying, we gotta work together. We gotta have black dresses on when everyone else is speaking up. I always wonder, like, at what point in that process in their mind did they say, I really need to tell someone, like, I really need to do the count. It's like when an FDA releases a new drug and approves it. I saw this on Stossel once, and the girl's like, we're going to save 15,000 people a year. We've had it under development for 5 years. And Stossel goes, so you've sentenced 75,000 people to die in the last 5 years. She goes, well, that's a horrible thing to say. He goes, well, that's reality. Like, and that's how I look at Gwyneth Paltrow. You said something now. How many depressed, broken shells of women with shattered dreams got sent home after servicing some now with nothing to show for it, because you weren't brave until after you hit the cash cow, until you decided it was the right time to speak up. And that's in Hollywood. It's one thing. In the Olympics, where they actually had her under a secrecy clause, Michaela Maroney wasn't allowed to tell anybody anything. To me, that sounds like Benghazi and this CIA gag where they said, look, no one talks to the press because it's a matter of national security. Who are you looking out for at that point? How obvious is it?
Well, we all know who everybody looks out for. It's themselves, right? I mean, this is not something that is new to human nature. People don't want to be, for instance, you just talked about, like, these beautiful actresses, all the talent in the world, they can do things that you and I can't do on film, memorizing lines, pretending like the ugly guy is the cute guy, all these types of things that
I can't do that. You can't do that?
One time. All right. But that was it. Chris Pratt, you know what I'm saying? All right. But no, I mean, no, that's horrible. Chris Pratt and I, no.
Anna Faris, I'll never forgive you, by the way.
Yeah. Anna Faris got the way. But no, I mean, it's just, nobody wants to be out there. Right. So that whole thing about ostracization is just, it's scary. And if you know that your competition is, in, let's say the Olympics, right? You're 0.1, point away from either silver or gold. That's a reality, right? When you're sprinting, there's a reality involved in, one little hiccup loses sometimes all of medal contention, right? It might not just be from first to second. It might be from first to last in a 100-yard sprint, right? So 100 meters, sorry, we're in America. So, but those are the things that are just so small and so silver. And if you say that every actress in Hollywood is a dime a dozen, and I would say that there are a lot better ones than others, but to a producer, it's, what am I going to get out of this one versus this one? And is there really like a big difference? To them, no. So if you say something, you're out. You're automatic down the line, and you went from first to out of a gold medal competition.
It's true. I used to work for the Phoenix Suns as a hobby, and the dancers got paid minimum wage and they didn't get treated that well. And they used to complain about it. I'm like, the problem is, as special as you feel, there's about 1,000 girls they could call tomorrow and take your place. So you kind of have to put up with whatever they throw at you. So I think of the Olympics and go, you know what? It's not like the pool is that big, but in Hollywood, certainly they get a big head about how great they are. But if, like you said, if the only thing that's in it for the producer between one blonde and one brunette is how long they're going to stay over after the cut ends, that's a pretty crappy culture to be a part of. The question is, at what point do they go, I'm actually contributing to this culture by the patriarchy and say it's unfair to women. But if you're not willing to sacrifice, if you're willing to sacrifice your principles, it's never going to get fixed. And do you want to talk about the president of MSU? Did you read about her?
I heard after. So the funny part was, only a couple of days ago, the board of trustees, of Michigan State had her back. They said, oh, this is a person that, we can stand behind, tons of great integrity and character. And then all of a sudden, within one day of Aly Raceman's testimony and, the sentencing about to go on and the coverage that was there, they came back and they said, well, maybe we don't support her. And then it came out that maybe she did hear about the complaint, but she didn't read it. She didn't read the whole thing. She heard about it, but assumed things were being taken care of. I am sorry. If you're the president of this university and part of your prestige, right, of not wanting to be part of the hashtag winning crowd is that you have the doctor of the most successful Olympic athletes we have in America, the darlings of all of America. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you took a selling point, and I'd rather not take away that selling point. I like that selling point. I like the convenience of having him here, much less, is it really true? He's a respected doctor.
He's a doctor. Come on. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Nick. So the thing that I thought was,
I was waiting for the first voice to come out too, by the way. I was
what thing? Till I jam this down your throat. The interesting part about what you said is when they go, we still support her, but yeah, she might not have seen the report. Oh, she got the report, but she didn't read it. It sounds like every argument I have with my 6-year-old when he gets hand caught in the cookie jar. These are adults running an established elite university of higher education, and they sound like my 6-year-old when I catch him doing something he's not supposed to be. So I read this great article where they're talking about this woman, Luana Simon, which is funny because kind of like Mary Sue to me, which I've been hearing a lot since Star Wars came out. Dr. Larry Nassar gets a 175-year prison sentence, which is like 1 year to 2 years per victim. That sounds kind of light to me. But after 100 years, is it just to make sure he doesn't get on parole? Like, what difference does it make if we go, 1,000? I got 1,000. Do I have 1,500? 1,500, 2,000, 2,000 in the back. Like, who cares after 100 years? What difference does it make?
This is the funny part is we're going to have all of these. I mean, now that we have no technical difficulties, right? We're going to have a lot of podcasts here that, people can listen to. And we're going to get a lot about psychology, right? Because I'm a big fan of psychology. And so when you hear 175 years, right, that's supposed to be a deterrent. It's supposed to, for the next guy that goes, well, I was thinking about, doing the most horrible things to the girls in the world, but now I know that there's 175 years potentially behind it. Personally, I think these types of guys should be just beaten in a woodshed until every dad of every single one of those, every mom of every single one of those victims gets to just take a couple of shots. And then at the end, we just shoot them in the head. But obviously that's not what happens. We have a justice system here that prevents that. And so it's not a capital crime that you can kill them for. Therefore, let's give them a sentence that sounds really, really menacing so that other people won't do that, because psychologically 175 years sounds like a really long time.
Yeah. Goes, suck it, judge. Goes, you want 200? I'll go to 200. I'll go 250. Keep your mouth shut. I think that in the old days, they used to chemically sterilize people they thought were a menace to society. Not saying whether I agree with it or disagree, but once he gets past the point where he knows he's not getting out, there's got to be something worse on top of that. So if you're going to chemically sterilize and bring it back, you don't use a needle. After 150 years, you use like maybe the hard side of a toilet plunger or a street light. Like 150 years is a toilet plunger. Street light is 500 plus. You'll need a truck.
I just say, don't let them be in solitary confinement and things will take care of itself in prison justice. Because not only are we talking about America's darlings, we're talking about, you said infant little girls. I mean, we're talking about, 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds. This is a disgusting man. And prisoners, even though as bad as they can be, they usually have some semblance of in-house justice. And so
in my mind, I'm asking the question, like, how do you know this? I mean, I've heard things like this, but Simon, how do you know? You're all about psychology. How did you wrap your psychological mind about what actually happens in prison?
If you subscribe to enough left wing, right wing, and middle wings and everything like that I do, and you have insomnia and you don't sleep, but probably 3 to 4 hours a day, you have a lot of time to read. I mean, we could talk about a lot of different subjects in which I am no expert, but I have a lot of little knowledge on. And it's annoying actually to my wife. That's actually how it works. It's just completely annoying to her. But
Luana Simon, there's two things here. There's Dr. Nassar and there's Luana Simon. I want to start with her because I was particularly disgusted months ago when I read about what this man did. to these girls. And it's amazing to me that those things can happen in a world where they have parents who are dedicated to the sport and the word just doesn't get out. And it was because he was lying to them and telling them it was going to help their performance. And in a sport where, once the Russian and Chinese judges' scores are thrown out, it's 0.05, 0.06. So they're going to let him stick his hands inside and give him a massage on the inside of their body and say, this is really going to help you on the balance beam. Like, this is going to make a difference. It's disgusting. However, her accepted her decision to resign, which of course she wasn't going to do. She said, throughout my career, I have consistently and persistently spoken. Do you need to say those both? Consistently and persistently spoken and worked on behalf of team
adverbs. She's a big fan of the adverbs.
Yeah. Yeah. I've tried to make it not about me. When someone says it's not about me, what is that code for? Like, if you had to Rosetta Stone that, what does not about me mean?
Well, if you Rosetta Stone it, so there's this ancient, no, it just means it's about them.
Okay. I was hoping you wouldn't philosophize that. It's all about me. Halle Berry taught us this lesson. If they say it's not about me, submitted my work to understand that I cannot make it about me now, which implies maybe later it can be about her. I don't know. Therefore, I am tendering my resignation as president according to my terms of my employment agreement, which is pertinent because there's a description of that employment agreement. And then she says, as president, it's only natural that I am the focus of this anger. I need Rosetta Stone. And then anger. She also pledged, and tell me what city, if you do something horrible or get involved with the wrong people, you set up a fund. She's setting up a fund for Nassar's victims, totaling around 10 million from the school's coffers. Opa, here's your payout. Sorry I didn't say anything for 15 years. Have some money. At least they get more than most people do when they get raped by someone who knew better for 15 years. I think it's ironic her name, she's not Simple Symon, just regular Simon. It says that Simon allegedly is not without fault or merely a scapegoat. The Detroit News reported that 14 MSU officials had knowledge or could reasonably have known of Nassar's exploits. The school denies a cover-up, calling the allegations simply false. They didn't use categorically false. If they say categorically, you know.
Yeah, because it's another adverb.
Yeah. But the administrators, the Detroit News says the administrators refused to believe the accusers. This is where it gets interesting. Nassar's victims directly blamed MSU for mishandling their complaints, which means they were filed and they were ignored. One of them said, quote, I told Michigan State University in 1997, one woman said, but instead of being protected, I was humiliated. I was in trouble and brainwashed into believing that I was the problem. Even though she's going to resign, there are already cases from 2010 against sex abuse, discrimination, and a case of rape against the Michigan State basketball team. Like Janet Napolitan to California, what has she been doing for the last 8 years? Don't answer that yet. Simon gets a pretty good deal, even for being forced out. The Detroit Free Press says she gets a cool $750,000 for the first year of her resignation, according to her employment agreement, and then 75% of her salary for subsequent years in retirement. That's about $500,000 to you math whizzes. She also gets tickets to MSU sporting events, dedicated parking on campus, and even paid research leave. That's your reward, your golden parachute, when 150 girls have been raped under the watchful eyes of someone of your direct employment. Sign me up. I'll just take the money. I don't need all the funny business.
You know, the funny part is, I think she must not be a big reader. So, you know, the funny part about being a president in, say, like a Midwest type of state in the last, I don't know, 5-6 years, thinking about prominent programs that let sex abuse run rampant. If there was only another case that we could think of, any case where people knew it was going on, saw it in the shower, I mean, you would think she's probably not an avid reader, so she probably never read about Penn State. Yeah, that was a very, very small news story when it came out. I mean, people didn't even know who the coach of the football team was. They called him Patty or, paternity. They couldn't remember because it was such a small program.
Yeah, there was that ice cream flavor across the street called the Sandusky, which was the 2 scoops with nuts on it. But that has nothing to do with this at all. Nothing.
Nope. No.
Nobody knew. Nobody knew.
No.
I thought you were going to talk about that when someone on a sports team gets accused of rape, it makes the news and they try to figure out what happened. But I may be making that up. Lacrosse, Duke, fluke, Samsonite. I forget who it was. No, you probably never even heard about it. So sorry, I'll look it up. I'll send you a link.
Isn't it sad how many times we can relate this to prominent programs or people we want to bring down, and it's all over, but it's when it's the things that aren't sexy, or, that people want to steer away from, or, hug their daughters at the end of the day because they're just scared that they're actually have to go out into a world like this, that all of a sudden we get a little bit of action on. And it takes that outside of our women's soccer in the United States, which is also a hell of a good team, it takes that the women's gymnastics program, the most dominant of all programs in the world and probably in the Olympics outside of probably our swim team as well, to actually even make the cut, make the news, and not to, you just talked about that golden parachute. Any one of us, will work a lifetime for that kind of money. And yet she gets that as a, hey, thanks for stepping aside and, not ratting on all of us when we all knew this was going on. After admitting to, yeah, I didn't even read it when the most prominent thing I have at this university outside of my football team and every 3 years my basketball team, is in shambles. Yeah.
So for everyone listening, like, think about your morning at work, right? You go in, you get your coffee, say hi to a couple people in the hallway, you sit at your desk, you get a couple emails, some paper sitting there, and like rape accusation, like, oh, look, Tic Tacs. Like, that's what happened. And you look at this and go, the biggest problem I have is if that happened at your school, if you were employing Dr. Nasser and you found out that he was molesting young girls for decades, what would your gut level reaction be?
How quickly can we get to jail? Would be my
legal system. Maybe it's a function of the fact that the school has to protect itself. I would think, I am mortified. I am horribly sorry. I will lay down on my sword, and to the day I die, I will always bear the stain of this embarrassment. And I can never fix what happened to these kids. And then maybe say, and here's what we can do as a school to try to make it right, even though there's no way to fix it. They don't do that. They have a week or two to cool out the voters while that's Thomas Sowell's line, to cool people out, say they're not sure what they're going to do. We still support her. She had it on her desk, but she didn't see it. And then, like, all right, time is right. We got all the arrangements in place. We've negotiated her salary. This is what you're going to do. And everyone's protected, and we have to spend our taxpayer dollars. And this whole, as Obama would say about Libya, this whole shiz show is going to go on forever to try to get to the bottom of this, instead of just coming out and said, this is a bad thing. And because I care about #MeToo and I don't want women abused or sexually molested, especially when they're minors, we're going to make sure this never happens again. You'll never hear that.
Yeah, it's I think you've talked about it before in conversations that we've had about this, is, like, at what point can't you not turn around anymore, right? So you've let a few things go. You're about half a mile down the road. You take a look back. You're not proud of it, but you know that what's coming up is probably a 10-mile journey. And if you don't turn back now, it's going to get a lot worse. Or can I just hope it goes away? And the only way you know that is how far you're willing to go down and let everything else behind you be the past. And she tried to let that one thing be the one thing she left behind. And by the time she got down and had to, have some culpability, she's like, you know what? This is probably a good time for me to step aside. And by the way, here's $10 million of the of not my money, right? It's really easy to start a fund when it's not your 10 million. Matter of fact, I'd like to start a fund for not my 10 million. Can we get that hashtag going?
Yeah, come to my house. I'll show you my my pool glove, my 3-fingered glove that I have. And that's, and Michaela Maroney, or Jabroni, as I like to call her, Jabroni, got paid as part of her secrecy clause. She got a settlement. So I'm sure that wasn't Luann's money either. But I agree. You're in this room and everyone's sitting around going, okay, we got a big problem here. This guy's a child molester and he's our doctor. And if we get rid of him, he could countersue us for wrongful termination. We can't admit this is happening. And the most important thing, I learned this from Chris Rock. One of the few things I learned. He was talking about Kobe Bryant and dropping, life and what he was out doing. I've worked for some really great Kobe Bryant stories about people he found in the audience and might have got a phone number from. The craziest thing to me was that when Chris Rock was talking about the kind of person Kobe is, he goes, look, I know he did. Maybe this is Dave Chappelle. I forget. He's like, I know he did some horrible things. I know what he's accused of. But this is a man who scores over 40 points a night in the National Basketball Association. And everyone stops because they don't know if they should laugh. He's like, 40 points a night in the National Basketball Association. Wrap your head around that, man. Wrap your head. You know what? And he talks about what it takes to fuel that kind of prowess on the basketball court. But it's a similar mindset. They're in this room and they're like, look, we got one thing that needs to happen. We got to keep the Chinese from winning the all-around medal. Everything that doesn't help us do that is a distraction from our goal. Hashtag winning. That's how I sum that up with a little bow. No one there, none of these good people who probably go to church on Sundays and have families and would never dream of allowing someone to even think about molesting their kids are willing to put that aside for the unity of this one goal they have, which is totally misplaced because they're willing to sacrifice these young girls' lives. I mean, it screws their heads up so they can accomplish that goal. And if they get away with it, when it's all said and done, they'll have the medals, like Tom Brady with the Patriots, like Hillary Clinton. If she'd won the election, we'd never know that all this stuff had ever happened. And usually that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the problem with groupthink, right? This is the problem with going along with the masses. And this is going to be one of those topics that we'll revisit, probably a dozen times in the first dozen shows is, the reason that America is such a great place is it was founded off of the whole attributes of being able to have a life, liberty, and your pursuit of happiness. And you can't have one of those things without the other one coming first, right? So life, being able to, not have a one-child system, in your case, not having a 64-child system, Speaking of which, how's the 65th coming along?
Oh, my seventh sister wife she's had a rough day. She's a little bit sick, but not bad. A lot of diapers. We use cloth diapers, so of course we've got sewer issues, but that's all that matters.
Oh, that's a whole nother topic, man.
Yeah, you talked about the one child rule. I've got a really good interview that I did with a writer from the NRO named Stephen Mosher, who talked about being in China at the time that they instituted that policy and watching them rip pregnant women away from their significant others on the street and take them into a panic room and basically convincing them that they needed to have an divorce from the child in their body. And as soon as they agreed to it, because the can opener would come out, they'd cut them open and pull the baby out. And he said it was just the sickest thing you could ever see. But they could do that because they had a culture where the government was calling the shots. And I want to transition to the FBI and the culture where these people have taken an oath to do certain things, a sacred oath to protect the country against foreign threats, to make sure that they're upholding the statutes and the laws and policies and procedures of the Bureau. And then when the lights go off and they're all in the secret room, the oath that really motivates them, the one that is going to give them power and prestige and control over things they'd never be entrusted with otherwise. So I know you're basically an expert on the FBI, even though, what did you get turned down for? Was it your mile time?
The lack of pull-ups, like all of them.
You should go back now. They've changed the standards because of I can't get into that. There's,
what's funny is
change your name.
They didn't even make me do. I wouldn't even need to do the physical part. They would have just looked at me and go, counterintelligence.
Why?
Why counterintelligence? I obviously eat a lot off counters. Dad joke number 7. All right. How many we got in this round?
You're almost out. Yeah.
You see oh, that's horrible. I apologize to the one fan that we probably have out there listening right now.
It's first show. It's still early.
Yeah. FBI, right? This is supposed to be what we consider the least politicized police force in the country, right? This is a nationalized police force is virtually what this is. And when you talk about other police forces out there, right? We have to have elected sheriffs. We elect mayors that are over police forces. We elect, so a lot of other things involved in states and cities and counties and everything else involves a lot of politics. But the FBI is supposed to be pure. It's supposed to be the one place that, man, everybody can go to and say, oh, that's an FBI investigation. At least we're going to get to the bottom of this. Guess what? If we can't trust that And a lot of people will say that's because of Donald Trump. And, you know, to some standards, right, Donald Trump could possibly be a part of that. But when you start talking about, like, we haven't seen what the secret society stuff is yet, so I'm not going to make speculations on what that actually means. And we haven't really heard, you know, Donald Trump's testimony on, you know, his collusion and everything like that. But when you get these special counsels, the problem is they're allowed to do whatever they want. So the first thing they say is, this is why we have a special counsel. And then the second thing they do is, but you have free reign to do whatever you need without any interruptions or us meddling in that.
Right, right.
And so when you get tens of millions of dollars of taxpayer money to do an investigation, you better come up with results. And so we saw this with many things, right? We saw it with Bill Clinton. We saw it with, now we're seeing it with Donald Trump. Yeah, it's like, yeah, we'll do it with anything that we can get a result out of. And so far, what have we gotten where people want this collusion and everything like that? And I don't know why people do want that. As much as you hate Trump, it's not good for the economy when sitting presidents get impeached. We've seen that multiple times over.
Right.
But right now, why do we want to see it? Well, we're so politicized, right? We're in that group think, and this group think is going to be always something that's a part of it. You either got to be left or you got to be right. The FBI wasn't supposed to be left or right. They're supposed to be dead center. And now we've seen that there was a whole political scheme involved. And even if the true things that were, what the Republicans believe were said were not said, there's a perception out there when you're meeting on the tarmac and you're getting letters changed, that say that she wasn't criminally, she was just negligent or whatever you want to say, instead of actually saying that she was a criminal.
I've used that every time I get pulled over. He's like, I know what you're thinking, but really it was just me being a little careless, right? You're going to say negligence. I say careless. Let's just disagree to disagree and I'll go on my way. Hasn't worked yet. And that's what pisses me off about it. Why doesn't it work for me if it works for her? I got to call James Comey.
Yeah. You know what? I hear they text a lot in the FBI. I don't know if I'd call them.
Probably right. I just don't get responses very fast that way. I don't know if he's not getting them or if they're just getting deleted or hidden. It's slow response rate.
Yeah, there's probably a glitch for Samsung. I'm sure that's what's going on there. But really, I mean, honestly, this is an unbelievable discussion that we have to be having, because these guys have been in, these aren't 1-2 year old FBI agents that have spent their whole life wanting to be an FBI agent, and they're new on the job and they're uncovering different things, or they're going out into the field and actually doing great work. And, I would probably venture to say that 95% of all of our FBI guys are probably like that. And I'm sure that 3 of that 5% have strong political views, but that doesn't let them hinder. But it's the 2% at the top that looks like we've had the issues with, because,
right.
They're the ones that seem to want to hang on to what was going on in the past. And, that starts with the DOJ is the one that's overseer of, the FBI. And when you have them saying that they're Obama's wingman, and then now you've seen things that happen that say, well, actually the things that they said didn't happen, we've already proven have happened. It's not over any of the mainstream media, but all you have to do is, type it in a Google search. Well, not Google, probably Bing. Google, you'll just go to Google page 4 and you'll probably find the first article on something bad like that.
Right.
But yeah, this is sad. This is a sad thing for our country if we can't trust the FBI to be apolitical in this.
So you talk about Trump getting blamed for it, and I've heard that argument out there. But this, for me, I mean, you go all the way back to J. Edgar Hoover and say, well, there's always been corruption, or the McCarthy Red Scare. My problem is, though, it's about the culture. And we talk about this all the time. You can look at the little tiny laws that are being broken. You look at a potential conspiracy and put your tinfoil hat on. But you can also just look at the culture and say, look, if you've got the FBI deputy directs messages to his mistress, who, by the way, it's hard to fight crimes when you're out, fighting syphilis in a hotel room somewhere. And this is a problem that I have. I interviewed Pamela Geller on the show. You
have a problem fighting syphilis?
Well, it's not about me. This is not about me. It's all about me. The Pamela Geller talks about how the FBI was at the terrorist attack in Garland, Texas, and did nothing. They did nothing. They didn't even warn the police that they were there, and someone lost his life. And she goes, look, what good is an FBI if they're going to investigate these people? They get the And then they say, well, we had no idea. It was like a needle in a haystack, which is what Comey said, by the way, about this terrorist. When there's an FBI agent taking pictures of him when he's getting out of the car with a rifle in his hand. This raises questions for me. So I look back to the first time I was aware of this. I think I'd probably have to say, you remember a couple of years ago during the Obama presidency when they caught all the Secret Service guys in Colombia with hookers, and they're asking questions about whether or not this could potentially be a Gary Oldman, Air Force One situation where these guys can be compromised into putting the president in a dangerous situation, which is 100% true. The Secret Service, if the FBI are the nation's policemen, the Secret Service were their choir boys. Like, they were supposed to be the best of the with the IRS, you look at with Lois Lerner, you look at the DOJ during the Fast and Furious scandal, and then you look at the CIA, and I can't remember the example I was going to give with Leon Panetta, or maybe even James Clapper, the time he got asked about a terrorist attack in Madrid, and he didn't even know it had happened yet. It was news for a day. He's like, oh, I hadn't heard about that until you told me. I'm like, which hotel room have you been avoiding syphilis in, dude? That's a joke. Clapper, I mean, we know it was the clap. And now the FBI, and you think, yeah, it's called a culture of corruption. And once it starts, it has to be administered to like it's cancer because it matriculates everywhere and it costs people their lives. I mean, I have some really good quotes from the founders that I can't find at the moment about what happens when the people you entrust your liberty to cannot be trusted. You're the one who pays the price for that. And so I look at the FBI with Strzok and Mueller and Lisa Page and say, I'm sure these are all isolated incidents. I mean, we can trust these people, right? Because we can trust the head of MSU. We can trust the people at the Olympic Foundation. Pick a scandal that's happened in the last 6 months. All the people who run it are probably pretty trustworthy. They just happen to be doing things that are incredibly dishonest. And speaking of Pamela Geller, one of the quotes we talked about from Muhammad, which I agree with him on, is that all deceit or all war is founded in deceit, right? So if that's true, and the FBI is deceiving us, who are they waging war on? That's the question I want to know. And that's the reason I think we should care. When someone will lie to you, and not just to you, when someone will break an oath they've taken to the Constitution, they have declared war via deceit. What you need to figure out is who's the target and why are they waging it? And I think that's the real important takeaway from the FBI investigation, and the same one that's embodied and personified at MSU. It's through attrition or through, unwittingly, it's the war on these little girls because that's the price that has to be paid. No pun. That's the booty from the war that has to be waged because they have to have victory. And victory is their pride, their prestige, their accomplishment, gold medals. And, those little girls be damned.
Yep.
Sorry, was that supposed to be the form of a question?
No, the diatribe is 100% correct. I mean, I think you alluded to a few things earlier in that monologue about when you look at J. Edgar Hoover and you look at McCarthy, and when you look in history, right, J. Edgar Hoover did really good things, right? I mean, let's not beat around the bush. I mean, he did a lot of bad things, but I mean, he established a pretty reputable brand. And McCarthy at the time was looked at and revered amongst millions, right? Like, get those commie bastards out of Hollywood, get them out of our streets, get them out of our homes, get them out of our neighborhoods. And for good reason. Now, back then, is people were scared, right? We used that as a witch hunt. But now you go back and you say, okay, 50, 100 years later, how do we look back at these guys? It's not through being revered, right? We look at them as like, they were completely and maliciously flawed. And I used maliciously because I hadn't used an adverb in a while. So
yeah, I was starting to wonder. It was timing it. Yeah, and the guy that was flawed that we revere is FDR, whose fault it was that we've of Europe, just which I did a video. Wrap up. I want to talk about Dinesh D'Souza because I had interviewed him on the show. I'm a fan. I think you took a picture. You were hugging him, right? Hopefully you're keeping your hands where we could see him in that picture.
He held me in close embrace. Yes.
Oh man, you put the bang in Bangalore, Simon. It's simple.
You put the war in Bangalore.
Bangalore. How dare you? There's an article that came out about Dinesh D'Souza tweeting, and his quote was, if Obama ordered surveillance on real Donald Trump, which, by the way, Obama's cool as a cucumber, he's calculated, no scandals, #scandal. But if it did happen, I wonder if he ordered it on me in 2012, leading to my selective prosecution. Next tweet, my file obtained by the House Oversight Committee shows FBI red flagged me as an Obama critic and allocated $100,000 to investigate a $20,000 case.
But you know what? I mean, we know for a fact that a lot of different other people were investigated for that same crime, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
there was.
It's there's
Slappy, Samsonite.
Samsonite was definitely one of them. Yeah, I mean, how sad is this? It's like you're talking about a man that openly criticized the president, and you know, for whatever reasons, his reasons were good, or you know, if you're on the other side, their reasons were bad, and they're misconstrued facts. And I love misconstrued facts. That'll be another topic. But facts are facts, right? And so when that happened, all of a sudden, every part of what he did in his life was scrutinized, to the fact that he made a $10,000 contribution to his friend, which was perfectly legal, but then turned around and gave another $10,000 to another person to give to his friend. And that is all of a sudden, you know, worth prison time, extended prison time, you know, extended probation time. And the FBI had a whole counterintelligence agency look at a man that basically gave an extra 10 grand to a local campaign.
Yeah. And for me, it's the branding, right? So if you're Obama and you hate this man with the heat of 1,000 suns, which he probably does, and he's making these videos about you and writing these books, which The Roots of Obama's Rage was a pretty good book to juxtapose Dinesh with Obama. Born the same year, married the same year, both immigrants from another country, technically, maybe not, but both have family in a third world country, and they come here and their life experience is totally different. Right? Dinesh comes to Arizona, a poor person. Obama goes to Hawaii, upper middle class. Then they go to Ivy League schools. They get married the same year. And he just talks about how their ideology was formed and who were their influences. And Obama hates the guy. So now you get to brand Dinesh is out, including the event we went to, on Twitter and on social media and even in person. What is he known as? Oh, there's Dinesh D'Souza, the felon who happens to be a hypocrite. I mean, if you're Obama, that's got to be pretty satisfying, knowing that's pretty much as you can do with a phone and a pen, because you're still president.
Yeah. Now, was that a welfare giving out phone?
Obama phone?
It was an Obama phone.
I don't know who paid for it, but I'm sure it came out of my taxes. You know, we were talking about this before we came on, and
actually, I hear they have good cell phone coverage in Haiti. The Clintons made sure of that, didn't they?
Too soon.
Too soon?
Too soon.
Oh.
Yeah, Haiti. I had friends who went to Haiti as part of relief. They had to pay for their own supplies because, you know, the Red Cross wasn't getting anything. Is it Puerto Rico now where they found a cache of supplies that the Puerto Rican government was hiding? So they
that they found in warehouses government issued supplies that were supposed to go to the people and didn't. And actually, it wasn't even that they found it. They had to do a special ops type of raid in order to get in there, from what I read. And like that seems like there might have been something more malicious in there, which is really sad. But you know, there's so much with that we got to get away from when we talk about segmenting ourselves and everything like that. And this program will hopefully help that in a lot of ways. Of, you know, should I care? Should I care about this perverted man that you know, tried to ruin the lives of 150 women? And you know, glad to see some of those testimonies of those girls are, you know, they got their head on straight. They're dedicated. Obviously, if they're, you know, in higher rungs of the gymnastics world, that dedication alone is, you know, hours and hours and hours every day outside of schoolwork. And, you know, God bless them. But sounds like a lot of them, you know, obviously are, I mean, they're going to carry that stain with them for the rest of their life. Not one that's on them because of them, but because of this horrible guy. And should I care about that? Yeah, because what led this man to be able to victimize so many people? And we have to get away from not being okay with getting out of these groupthink mentalities and say, you know, ostracize me all you want, but I have a principle and I have to uphold that principle. And, you know, same with the FBI. What guy is going to come out and say, hey, I happen to be a clerk that fumbled through some paperwork and saw, hey, we shouldn't probably be figuring out ways to you know, empty out a system of emails or, you know, overlooking politicians, different, you know, vices, or, oh, hey, by the way, these now are text messages that I saw something go away with. So
after Google searching how to make text messages disappear. Yeah, I think if I were to wrap it up and say that at MSU, this doctor could have gotten away with this. I don't know what would have had to change. I mean, maybe it would have helped if Jabroni didn't get the silver and kind of do this whole thing. That got a lot of press, way more press than him molesting her. If Hillary Clinton got elected, all this stuff with the FBI, we wouldn't know about it. Maybe it would be a fairy tale we hear about the LBJ or the J. Edgar Hoover administration 20 years from now. We go, oh, those kooks. It's right-wing kooks. It's crazy. But we talked earlier about how it's really all about winning. Winning makes all this stuff go away. So if you're me or you or someone who's out there, these games are won and lost on the margins, right? Dr. Nassar lived a long time and didn't get in trouble for this. Hillary Clinton got away with a lot. The FBI got away with a lot. So the question I ask myself is, if it comes down to me, if I'm the one who has to make the decision, what am I willing to sacrifice to do the right thing? And this is not me on my high horse. It's a question I think is important, because I was reading an article recently on Abraham and whether or not he was really asked to sacrifice his son. And the philosopher that I was reading is a genius. He goes, look, if you believe in Christianity, then there's always the question of why would he be asked to do this? Did he believe that his son could be saved? Could he believe he'd be brought back to life? Because you're asking the wrong question. The question is, if he's being tested to see what he will do to stand up for righteous causes, it's the most difficult thing he could possibly ask. What's the next hardest thing to ask of him? There isn't anything. This is of someone he loved more than himself. So the question I have is, when you see this kind of wrongdoing, if you're involved in it, what are you willing to sacrifice to make sure the outcome is the right one? And for these people, unfortunately, the lesson I learned is not much. Not much. Speaking out will cost them too much, and they're not willing to do it. And that's why I think we should care. Because eventually it might not be them, it might be us. And we have to do the right thing.
Agreed. That's why we care. Everything, all the other facts are what's left.
Or in the words of everyone's favorite 10-year-old general, come on, it's not working. Oh, I was going to go out in style, but oh, here it is. Can you see my screen? This is my first time doing this. Hello.
No audio.
Oh, you can't hear it?
I can't.
How about now? Can you hear it now? Let's try it again. Can you hear it?
No. I blame the producer. Is our technical producer on set? This is really dramatic. I'm going to give it a play-by-play in case people can't hear it.
Okay, no. Oh, ready. This is Hillary Clinton and the man version of.
Hey,
50 years they never returned. The shame of this genocide forever. I'm too early.
Did he ask him to pick up something at the grocery store? I am not really sure what's going on right now.
Here it is.
I died in the last movie. Oh.
We won! That's it! That's all that matters. The way we win matters. So that was a horrible failure.
Have
you even seen that movie?
I haven't, but it is a good ending. I mean, because that is really important of why we should care, is how do we get there? And yeah. Just
all right, I'm gonna scrap that one next. There's a soundboard in here too, but I don't know how to use it. All right, well, for those who joined us, I think we got up to 3 at one point. We're gonna invite some guests on. We're gonna have fun with this, but if you have suggestions, leave them in the comments or in the YouTube video, and we're glad you could join us. Simon, simple, keep it simple, and send us out. What do you got?
Do you want me to beatbox? I'm not sure.
I want you to turn your shirt around and then say something profound.
No, thank you everybody for listening. Yeah, this will be a fun journey of thought process and thought-provoking discussion.
Hell yeah. All right, everybody, class dismissed. See you next time.